Talking to Charlie Neill, Springfield, Kings County, and Charlie, just want to check with you. You're how old now?
92.
92. And when did you think you started going to the woods, working roughly?
Well, I worked in woods, I suppose, when I was 15, but I'm not sure. It would be, I know I was there shortly after that.
So fairly young, quite a few years ago. And things have changed immensely.
Oh, immensely.
Because now they used harvesters. But what kind of equipment, what did you use for a saw when you were starting?
Well, the first saw I had was a Precision, weighed 53 pounds with the starter on it. And then I shifted to a Pioneer open chainsaw, but the blade was wide on it. And that was in 1950.
Okay.
So it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any choke on that model. You tipped up and shook it and put gas down into the engine, and then you turned it upright and cranked it.
Hopefully it started.
Hopefully it started.
I bet you it didn't always.
Oh no, you shook it several times.
And then you'd get it going. What about when you were cutting, what were you cutting, logs or pulp or both?
Well, both.
Both.
Mostly pulp. But Dad cut logs for a living. I mean, he made that he kept buying properties around there, and he had 800 acres altogether.
Yeah.
And he cut logs on all of them.
Now, did he have a mill, or did you take them some? Where would you take them?
Well, his brother had a mill.
Oh, okay.
And Bruce Brown and so on.
So there were local mills right around this area.
Mills, lots of mills.
Yeah. What were those mills? Were they running on
steam power? More early. The early ones were on steam power. The one that Dad was mixed up with, he had a steam powered mill. He says you'd have to turn the hose on the fellow to get him out of the thing now and again and get in there to clean it. And then get scared and swell up. He couldn't get out the hole. Turn the cold water on him and soak him. Then he'd come out just fine.
So steam was still back in the 50s. They were still using
Well,
steam.
there was still some steam in the 50s. Now, before that, when I went to school, that would be grade 3. I would be 8 or 9. They 7, 8, or 9, somewhere there. There were a mill up the brook. It wasn't on the property that we owned, but it was on the next property, and the truck driver used to haul me to school. He'd stop and pick me up and pick me up along the road. He had an old Diamond T, and the vibration of that thing when it was hauling was something desperate. Just pound you.
That was a truck you don't even hear of that name anymore. Well, what about getting it out of the woods? Were you still using horses some?
Oh yes, all horses. And back in the 50s, it was all horses.
All horses. Yeah. Was that a good thing? Did you have good memories of horses, or?
I don't have good memories of horses, no.
So what did you shift to? Like after the tractors, farm tractors, or?
Farm tractor mainly. We used that up until, well, I guess I got a skidder there in 70, but we used the farm tractor to land.
Right up until then.
Yeah.
And
we had several different tractors, but I mean, we had a tractor to use.
What you wouldn't have a winch on them like they have today.
No.
So you had to cut a road to get in, or how did you get into some of
Well, mostly we had roads. It was pulpwood we hauled out with the tractors mainly. I never had, well, I guess I did too, haul some logs with a tractor, but not very many.
So they'd still use horses to bring it out some, or did you just clear it? You were clear cutting there?
Clear cut.
Clear
I
cutting,
think.
so you could get.
Well, a horse brought the logs. If you were using logs, you had to use the horses to bring the logs to the brow.
Okay, so that's still.
Still the horses.
Yeah, still
involved.
They were working. So when the pulp, where was it sold to? Who did you sell most of that to?
Crothers in Sussex, I think, bought most of it. He would send a buyer out or come himself and scale up the wood pile, give you that much and give you a little extra on hand. You had to have it to get the wood cut. And when he was still in business in Sussex when we started the SNB. I started that. I was one of the 19 members that started the SNB.
Well, okay, I want to talk to you about that, but just mentioning Grover Crothers, like he was sort of famous in the woodworking business back here, and just what did he do? He would buy your wood.
And then sell it. As far as I never knew beyond him buying it, what he did with it.
But he just bought it and and went with that.
Well,
so,
I imagine he had a dealer he could sell it to, no doubt.
He went on probably the pulp mill in St. John or somewhere. He'd look after that. Yeah. And how long did he keep going, roughly? Would it be in the 70s when he... Because he was quite an age when he stopped, I think.
Oh, yes. Yes. We started the SNB when he was getting up there in years.
Okay.
So he had... Yeah, I don't know how long, how old the man was when he quit buying wood. He was quite an age, I know that.
So you were right in on the beginning of the wood co-op here in this area. And you said there were how many members originally?
Well, 19 of us at that time started it.
Yeah.
And then they kept dying off and so on until we were down to old Pastor Hart, old Father Hart, they called him. He was the main recorder. You could set him in a meeting and have a meeting and he'd never take notes and he'd quote that meeting to you the next time, almost word for word.
Well, we should talk about him for a minute, because Reverend Hart, he was instrumental in helping woodworkers get a decent pay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And he was from around this area.
Yeah, he was Bloomfield down there.
Yeah. And he was quite a bit of help, was he, to get things going? Yeah.
Yeah, and Lawrence McRae, and there's the ones that I traveled with Lawrence a lot.
Yeah.
He traveled with me or whatever.
So the wood co-op, that's still in existence.
Yeah. But not nearly as it was, because Irving's have crowded it to the point of suing them even.
Yeah, so it's been rough the last few years with the wood co-op.
They still operate their line maintenance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Says I have a bunch coming on the Allen Flat supposed to be done there now. I don't know whether they are or not. I may have missed a call from them when I was away, but they were to do the line on the Monin place, which covers the Allen Flat Road, crosses the road and goes up here and then comes out and crosses the road again. So they're to use that to put the line and then paint it after that.
So they'll have the lines marked?
Yeah, I do that every 8 or 10 years.
Okay, then they'll do that, the wood co-op for you.
Well, the wood co-op will do it for me if I ask them to. They don't volunteer.
No, you've got to ask. Another thing that happened years ago, and you never hear, but a lot of people wouldn't even know what I was talking about, but peel pulp. Do you remember doing anything about peel pulp? Yes,
I remember peel pulp, all right. That was 4-foot wood, but it was skinned. And they fell the tree, and then they had a spud to take the bark off with. And
What was a spud?
Spud was just a steel thing with a curved end that they could ground the tree with and peel it.
Peel the bark.
Yeah.
Now, could you do that at any time of year?
No.
Or when did you have to peel pulp? What
It
time?
had to be done in the summertime when the sap was in the wood.
Okay,
Because once it froze and you couldn't budge it,
it was done.
it was done. Then once the weather turned a little cool while you were done, I'd say 1st November probably you'd quit peeling pulp.
Yeah. And when could you start again? How?
Oh, maybe in May.
May, if it was
I would
warm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was warm.
Now that sounds like pretty hard and hot, sticky work.
Oh, sticky, gooey. Everything, no matter what you touched, was gooey.
It was sap.
Yeah.
And
And dirty, stick to you, balsam.
I bet.
Oh,
Well, now you must have got a premium for that to do it.
oh, I
No.
think they did pay extra. I don't know. I helped cut it, but I never knew what. I never actually cut very much of it.
But
So I've heard the fellows talking about hauling it and so on. If it got wet, it would just
you couldn't keep it on the
couldn't
load.
keep it on the truck. Harold
Yeah.
Rickson, I remember he picked a load up one time. He said, "I'll fix that. I can just get to the brook." He got to the brook, he threw pails of water on the load and let it freeze. Then he drove out just as slick as could be.
Oh, okay. So that he was thinking. He knew
Yeah.
what to do with it.
But when he got it, nowadays that would weigh extra.
I suppose they wouldn't let you do that.
No.
So when you peeled it, it was right in the woods.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I've heard
And I had peeled very little. I was very fortunate. I didn't have to peel.
enough to know that it wasn't something you'd want to do a
Oh, I
lot.
wouldn't want to do it, no.
And then, Charlie, I can remember one time you were, well, right in your shop there. You were a dealer on power saws.
Yeah.
And when did you start that? And roughly?
56, I started it in a small way, and it kept going until 93, I think, 80, 93. Yes, it was running, I passed out, it was running until, because my brother passed away in 84, and it was still running then. Now it'd be 90 something, I guess.
In the 90s,
Yeah, 94 I closed the shop, I think it was.
So
Completely.
you would work on saws, plus you had woods that got cut too, so you're doing two things.
Oh yeah, well that was just two of the many.
Two of the many. There's
Two of the many.
Yeah. So you had a dealership here, I think, for
Yeah, I had a dealership for Pioneer, John's Red, McCullough. There was more than that.
So I can remember coming over here I bought a saw or two from you and getting repair work done. You'd have at least one fellow working for you.
Well, I had at the last 4 or 5 years, I had a fellow here all the time that had wanted to come.
Yeah.
Before that, it was part-time, just in the busy time of the year.
You'd work.
But see, I snowplowed every winter, so I'd be away lots of times from 2 o'clock in the morning till 11 at night, so I didn't have much time to work in the shop.
So you were pretty busy for a number of years between snow plowing, keeping the woods work going, and the saw business.
I don't remember doing too much woods work when I was snow plowing, but then again you wouldn't. It was deep snow, but you'd ease off then anyway.
The skidders must have made quite a difference when they come out with the winch. And
Oh, it's remarkable. The power that winch has on the one that I've got. Winch is only 10,000 pounds is all it is, the very least of any of them. And it will stand the machine up if it's working properly. Hooked onto something and it fetches up, and the machine will stand up, the brake's working good, and everything's working the way it should. The nose will come right up.
So it's got all kinds of power to pull out.
Yeah, well, it's got enough, but most of them have 4 times what that one's got.
The bigger ones.
Yeah.
So they were good because they had the winch on them and you could pull the tree in, but you could get right in.
Well,
over,
you go in over bushes, size of the ones 6 inches up to 6 inches, you could almost drive over them.
drive over them.
Yeah.
So they were a big improvement over the tractor,
Oh, big.
farm tractors.
Yeah, there was nothing to get caught underneath.
Yeah.
And stuff like that where tractor had the cable, the brakes and the clutch and stuff all sticking down there, and stick would jam in that and fetch you up, and there you'd be.
So a big difference, they were all armored underneath and big tires. If you got chains on them, you could get pretty near anywhere with them.
Yeah, yeah. I had a set of those, I don't know what you call them, but they're plates with a cork on each end, set at a little angle on the tire.
I've seen those, yeah.
And rough, my soul, they shake the daylights right out of you.
Yeah.
Because the skidder, the cab is fastened to the rear end. The front end, jazz there don't matter.
Okay. Yeah.
But the hind end, when it jazzes the operator too. So I ran without chains in the back a great deal of the time.
Okay.
And first I had those heavy ones on the front, and then I bought a set of spike ice chains for the front and took them off, and then I put them back on again at the back, and whenever we have to have them on the back.
Yeah.
Paul says they're awful handy. He likes them for going, because he's used to that thing of Dwight's with tires 34 inches wide, you know, and it's 16 on that one I got.
Half the
Yeah,
width,
half the
yeah.
width.
Yeah.
And he said to go up the hill on the Whitmore place there, out the Elm Flat, or out the Westcott Settlement, actually. He said it's big help getting up in the snow.
Yeah. So you had the skidder to bring it out. What did you use to load it, or did you have the truck have the loader, or how did you get it?
Trucks always had the loader, or else they brought a loader with them.
Oh, okay, so you never ended up
No.
having a.
No, I never had a loader of any kind, not even a trailer with a loader on it.
Just a skidder.
Just the skidders,
Yeah.
all that I had.
So you would bring it out, and then you decide, whether it be stud wood or logs or.
Well, I shipped a awful lot of my stuff, tree length, yeah.
Tree length. Okay. Yeah.
An awful lot of it went tree length. The last that I cut up on the west settlement there, and then brought it down, put it in a pile, and he just set the tractor trailer on one side and the loader on the other. He had the loader behind a truck and the tractor trailer, and he'd put the loader on there and saw it, put it on the tractor trailer.
Okay, so
He'd slick rig.
everything was pretty well mechanized.
Yeah, it was all mechanized then. I had brought it out with it and put it up 8-10 feet high with the skidder, and he just drove into that, put the loader next to it, or the loader was on the saw, and he worked from the wood to the saw to the truck.
Yeah, and then it was pretty well all whatever you needed.
Yeah, well, he'd cut whatever he could out of it,
Yeah.
and
So
he didn't get very many logs.
Oh, it didn't.
No,
Mostly
mostly studs and pulp.
pulp, stud wood and pulp, and that would go to the Irving mill in Sussex. Probably.
Sussex, I think, took all the. That's where I thought I was done with it when he loaded it,
Yeah,
but I think that's where it went.
and you could, with the skidder, the blade in the front, you could push it up quite high.
Yes,
And it-
chains on you, get a hold on it.
Oh, okay,
You can go quite a ways.
quite a pile with it that way.
Yeah.
So the majority of the wood that you cut, going back to say the 50s, and the last bit you would cut, mostly spruce, was it, or?
Well, I cut the fir, the last of it I cut the fir and left the spruce because
Oh, okay.
as the spruce would last and the fir wouldn't.
Yes, you could go in and pick out what
Yeah.
you wanted to. Yeah.
With a skidder you could get around and you could leave a spruce standing, you know.
And just kind of thin it out.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did you ever work in a lumber camp?
no.
Never did anything like that. And maybe you haven't completely, but when did you sort of stop the woods? Your sons are still cutting for you? So,
Yeah. Well, they're not cutting my firewood.
Just the firewood.
Yeah, that's all that he has time to cut. He wanted to cut some softwood off the price that I told him he could have in the end. But so far he's just cutting firewood off it.
Yeah.
He hasn't got around to cutting any.
Anything else? So productivity is, when you were cutting, say with those big saws, those heavy old fellas, how many cords could you reasonably, what would you get in a day? You know, a good day's work.
I was a poor cutter. I'd only cut three to 3.5 cord a day. But the difference I found between the skidder and the tractor was I had to put that all assault in the woods, put it in piles, then drive the tractor in. It took 1 day out of 4 to haul the wood out.
Yeah.
So you work 3 days and haul 1 day,
Yeah.
or whatever. When I got the skidder, the day's work was done when I got done, and I could cut the same amount of wood both.
So that increased productivity
Oh,
quite a
yes.
bit. Yeah. Yeah, it made a big difference.
You'd get lazy with it, but you still it helped out.
So a good day, I've always heard, like a good fella could cut 3 cords would be a good day for.
Oh, that's the average is
Yeah.
around 3, I think.
Yeah.
But there is fellas that cut 6.
Oh, there is.
Yeah,
There has
yes.
been, yeah.
I've heard tell of them.
You didn't see them too often.
No, they get in the shop occasionally and tell me about cutting. Be awful tired, but you get in a stand of popple and just knock it down and knock it up in
Okay.
8-foot lengths,
Yeah.
and the porter'd come take it.
So that would be under real good conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. So nowadays I hear that a harvester, you know, they can average 7-8 cords an hour.
Yeah,
And so that really makes it pretty well impossible to compete with a man on a power saw.
oh yeah,
Like those days are gone, I would assume.
yeah, they're gone.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, that gives us quite a few memories, and I thank you very much. And we'll maybe come back some other time if you think of some other things. So,
You're welcome to come.
thank you.